He didn't get on. Oh. All right. Peace and blessings, family. Welcome to a special edition of Earth Mama Live. I have the esteemed pleasure and honor to be talking with some young activists from Lake Charles, Louisiana. And we're going to talk to them around what's going on and where they are. And I understand that there is a protest that's going to happen this evening, the people versus the system. And we're going to learn about what that protest is about. And I would hope you all would share this and also engage your young people. And they're going to also tell us how we can support them as well. So I think there's a lot of young people, a lot of older people wanting to be supportive, wanting to be inside of a movement. But I think sometimes we need to know what can we do to help you all. So we're going to get started. First, we are joined by dear sister Tasia, right? How much is your name?
Tasia, yes, ma'am.
And then brother
yes,
Jalen. Also, we have sister Javon Muhammad, who is no stranger. The question I want to ask you all: why now? Why now? The people versus the system.
That's a good question.
So
it's actually.
I just want to say I know I'm not young. I'm just honored to be here because you said the young people. So I'm going to stand in my young energy and just say that I'm really excited that Tasia and Jalen logged on because I met both of them last week at a meeting, and I asked the same question when we talked about protesting, and there was some wonderful answers, and Jalen had absolutely touched my heart when he was talking about his understanding and coming into an understanding of what is really happening. And so I just wanted to add that for a little guidance because I think it's really important when we look at the next generation of people who are beginning to fight to change this American experience. We've been doing this a long time, bro. And I'm really glad that Tasia and Jalen is joining the Bay Area activism conversation now because y'all out in Cali now, live.
Right on, right on.
Oh, yeah. Always want to go to Cali.
So why now? Why now? What started this?
I feel like it been needed to happen because it was just built up anger just from all what the media was posting and everything. Just from the police brutality, then all the riots happening, people getting hit with rubber bullets. Like, I thought we had a right to protest. And I just feel they treat us as little, like just little to nothing. And I don't think that's right at all.
Right on, right on. What about you, dear sister?
Now is good as a time as any. Actually, we have had leaders in our city to try to get this monument moved down before. It's basically been swept under the rug. So the meaning and the purpose of our protest today is to get this on the agenda meeting so that the mayor and the police jury can sign something and put something in writing to get this statue removed because it's long overdue. It's long overdue.
Okay, the statue. Tell everybody about the statue. You know, I'm in Sacramento, California. We got statues, but I think sometimes when you're in the South, there's usually a deeper meaning because all of us, if you're, you know, particularly if you're a descendant of people who were enslaved in America, you have a root in the South somewhere. Tell us about the statue. Who is the statue person about, and why must it come down?
Tasia, I don't know.
Try not to take all the. So it's a Confederate statue. Okay. So here's the main thing that's really hurting the hearts of the people of Lake Charles. It's in the lawn of the courthouse where people go to vote early. You don't do like your normal voting there anymore. It's basically just for early voters, which is a majority of elders in our community. So every time that they go into the courthouse and they visit that area, they have to relive that trauma that their parents or their grandparents had to experience. So that's main reason why it needs to come down.
Right on.
So I want to add on to that. I moved here, as you know, a little bit over a year ago, and I was just flabbergasted when that's one of the first things that someone shared with me, that there is a statue that sits on the courthouse. I didn't really understand whether or not the courthouse was actually hearing cases, but it was of interest to me that it stands on what is supposed to be symbolic of a building of justice. It also stands on a building that is maintained and funded by tax dollars. Many of
Right.
those tax dollars, which are paid by Black people. I think when we start to look at symbols, we have to look at white supremacy and the
Right.
idea that the experience of Black people being in the United States is an experience of constant reminder that we were brought here for a purpose and that purpose only. And so when we start to try to exercise our full rights in the United States, there's a way that we're reminded that, we don't have the power. And as we look at equity, as the demographics start to change in the United States, as Black people speak louder for the right to exist, we have to remove symbolism like that, because it really, these are acts of domestic terrorism. And when people try to justify these statues and monuments and reminders standing there, we just have to be strong and fight back based on history. There's no way that you can defend such a statue if you look at history, if you look at the history of state rights, if you look at the history of the Confederacy and treason and precedents and things like that. And so as we start to work, young and old together, because we've always been together, to change what America will look like in the future, because it's changing naturally, right? People are beginning to look different. Immigration is looking different. The United States is looking different. And as we start to visit what it looks like to have inclusion and equality, we have to remove things like that represent domestic terrorism. Black people we always set great precedences. We have a lynching museum in Alabama. We have a museum in DC. We have museums across the country, but that's exactly what they are, museums. And so there's a great precedence and argument for them to uphold their history, but uphold it in a museum or someplace that is not funded by my dollar. Because I don't want to pay for it. I don't want to pay for that.
Right.
I was blind to the fact that what the monument was at first, because I went to majority white schools all my life. So I just grew up around not seeing racism, kind of blind to it, but not blind to it. So my high school, they were majority white. And whenever they went to take prom pictures or homecoming pictures, it was always in front of the courthouse. And I'm assuming it was because of their parents. That's where they wanted to take the pictures at. And my Black friends would go not knowing that they taking pictures in front of a Confederate monument. And because they didn't really know too much about the history either. We were all just so blind to it, because we all grew up around white people. So it was, I don't know, it wasn't something that we really noticed, because we all just really loving people.
Right on. Do you think something like when seeing all of these Confederate statues come down, is there anything we should be doing to replace that with something that's more unifying, or maybe paying homage to something that's going to uplift us all and not attached to, because we know that the Confederacy, no matter how you try to spin it, is never good for Black folks. I just don't, but since they're taking all of these statues down, and hopefully your statue would come down, what could we put in its place right there at that courthouse? When you think about that, if someone asks you, what could you put in its place?
I feel like anything is better than something that reminds people of a very bad past. And if you're going to tell a story, tell the whole story. This nation was built on the backs of African Americans. So I feel like if we were to replace those Confederate statues, we should all collectively come together with a plan or a idea on exactly what to put in place. It could be another statue, but let's not have a statue that is a constant reminder of our dirty laundry, basically.
I think we should think about replacing these statues with what we want to see. You know, I think at the time that a lot of this work was done, we weren't considered citizens, or we weren't considered full citizens. And our experience was different than the experience, you know, of the storyteller or the narrator. What's beautiful and exciting about young people in this movement now is that young people have a way of talking about things that older people my age and older, think is impossible. So, you know, the idea of dismantling the police, or what they're calling defunding the police. Well, you know, if you start to talk to comfortable people or older people, you know, that seems impossible. But we know that is what has to be done. And so, you know, young people come out and they see the world differently. And so absolutely the conversation about dismantling institutional racism is important. And when you dismantle something, you have to put it back together. And what you put it back together, like it should be reflective of the new system, the new country. And I think that as we start thinking about what places look like after we start dismantling systems of institutional racism, then we can have a better conversation about what we want to reflect as a community in public spaces. What do we want to remember? What gives justice and pride to everybody, not just some people? What makes everybody feel free, you know, in their place? What makes us live our best quality of life? And so we've been excluded from that process. And
Right.
now it's time to talk about what that process looks like with us in it. And so that for me feels really exciting. I wouldn't have an answer for what we could put there now, but I think that we can talk about as a group what makes me remember that I'm equal to you, what makes me have a voice, what makes my voice be just as loud as yours, what represents equality to not only you and I, but to our indigenous family that are up in South Dakota trying to ask, you know, for you know, the government to get off their property now. What does it look like when we talk about this idea of equality and equity across the country?
Right on, Jay. Right on. Jalen, as a young black man, what are you hoping today at 4? What do you think is going to happen today at 4? And how can people support y'all?
Well,
Because
it's
we're all
the
across the
team
country
here.
cheering for y'all, rooting for y'all, praying for y'all. What can we do?
Share our posts. We had posted it on Instagram. We need as much people to come out as possible. We need all the positive energy that we can get, send abundance of prayers, all of that, because we know how. Well, I've been seeing on social media, on the news, how the police have been treating the protesters in some ways. So I just pray it doesn't go that route. That's really the only thing.
Right on. Right on. What about you, dear sis? How can people support y'all? Anything you want to add on to that?
Yeah, definitely share the post, repost, word of mouth. I feel like is a very valuable tool to getting the word around. I feel like another way that you guys could support us if you sign the petition. If you go to Facebook or change.org, we have a petition up to get these monuments moved down. So sign the petition. Support local people in your community that are doing the same thing, because if we all collectively come together and for one cause, it'll be a change that'll last for generations. So support the people in your area that are doing the same thing, and ultimately that'll help us. It'll be contagious, you know.
Right on. Have you talked with any other young people, black and non-black, and have they been pretty much supportive?
Yes, most definitely. I've been getting black supporters, white supporters, Muslim supporters, Indian supporters. That's because like they see it's like some people are waking up and some people still sleep. But the more people, I see wake up, I go to them and tell them about everything that's going on, and just try to like get their point of view on things, see how they looking at it, because there's one side and then the other side. I don't want them thinking on the other side, because then we'll be a step back from what we're trying to pursue now. We're trying to progress, not regress.
Right. And I agree with that. There's one side, the other side, and then there's the truth. Personally, I've experienced support from people of my community, African Americans. I have a few friends that are from other communities, the Caucasians, Indians. I messaged and emailed a few of my Caucasian friends in particular to share the post and get the word out about the protest that's taking place today at 6 p.m. here in Lake Charles. And I was kind of taken back, so to speak. One of the young ladies that I reached out to, we were friends in middle school and high school. We were like two peas in a pod. She basically opened my message, left me on read, and then a minute later, no joke, 1 minute later, she did a Trump 2020 flyer and was like, forget the protest. So I was appalled because I never saw that side of her, especially from someone that you thought, shared the same values with you. So it's kind of 50-50 at this point for me.
Wow.
Yeah.
I think we have to, now is the time to insist that we know who is in our circle and who supports us, because this really is, there's no more time. Like,
Right.
there's just no more time to do this. The time, for right is always right now. And I was just reading earlier today, because I think when we talk about Martin Luther King, we tend to weaken him. We tend to make people like him. We forget that they were revolutionaries. And so one of the things that Martin Luther King spoke about is the white moderate, and how the white moderate is very dangerous for our movement, because that person doesn't have to pick a side. And if we talk about white supremacy and power, then the power lies on that side. And so in order to make faster change, or they need to pick a side and help us move this. So there's not really time for that anymore, and time is moving really fast. So I think that right now it's important that we do a kind of a check in with the people that we thought were rolling with us, so that we know who we have to exclude as we move, and we can identify how we move faster. But the time is right now. I'm a grandmother of 5. I don't want my 5 babies talking about this. My daughter, my children, I protested, they protest, they're young adults now, and now I have grandbabies. Like, we got to make this progress now, and that requires sacrifice, a little bit of fearlessness sometimes, and it requires us all to just move. So much of the Black experience is putting your feelings to the side to make sure you support other people and their feelings. And we come up short over and over. It's later for that.
Yeah.
I know. So basically, the protest is about removing that Confederate statue there. What is the process of making that happen? What is the process? You all talked about wanting to be your city council to be put on, I guess, the
so it's a police juror decision. So here in California, we have supervisors, we have counties, and then we have supervisors in those counties. Here in the land of the French, they have parishes. They don't have counties. So the board of supervisor member is represented here as a parish juror. And so the parish jury they have to vote on it to remove this sign. So far we know on the parish jury that we have 4 votes, but I believe there's 8 others. You guys correct me if I'm wrong. So the formal process is for them to decide to remove it, but we have to keep the conversation going. So part of the objective of our protest is to get the city council to put it on their agenda, so that we can speak about this, so that we can continue to get the pressure and sway the vote, so that the police jury vote to remove the
statue.
I think Javon froze.
You froze.
So she must have had a call or something. There you go. You're back. Okay. All right. No worries. Okay. So that's part of the protest is to basically, the objective is to get that statue removed, but there are steps to making that happen.
Mm-hmm.
So will you be doing anything in terms of have y'all met with the you call them police? Say that again, Javon?
Police jury.
Police jurors. So you met with the police jurors. Have y'all applied any pressure to them? Because all
So
over
I
the United
haven't-
States,
I haven't
people
met-
are changing all over the South.
I haven't met with the police jury, so there has been lots of conversation that has happened with them, and it really is a racial vote. So basically, there are 4 Black jurors, and their vote is to remove the statue. But they are outnumbered by white jurors who do not want to remove the statue. So it really has come down to a racial issue, which is really sad. Because that's why I go back to we have to see where people stand. Because, you know, in a society where we are all caring for each other, you shouldn't want your neighbor to have to live under the constant reminder of terrorism. And so I really feel like it's sad, but it is. So there has been much conversation around it. You know, we already know we have the 4 votes. We need the other votes. This is our attempt, you know, to put pressure on those other voters and to get them to see things the way they should be. And you all know Tasia and Jalen maybe a little bit more than me. Again, I'm new here, but I've been following, of course, this conversation.
Right on. How can older people support younger people in movements like this? What do y'all need from older people?
The older people in our community, I feel like it's a lot of different ways you can support, not just like coming to the protest. Like, older people have wisdom, and I feel like you can pour that wisdom down to the next generation and say, hey, I've seen it done this way, or hey, if we try it like this. Like, if you can give wisdom, you have a bigger contact list, you know people, you can pull strings and you can get stuff done in that kind of aspect more than I could, because I haven't been on earth as long as you. I don't have the reach like you have, and especially the wisdom. Like, I haven't been through the things that you've been through. So I feel like a number one thing for me personally that the elders in my community could contribute is by pouring out some of that wisdom.
Right on.
Wisdom. And we need more younger people or people of our age that are more submissive to information, because my generation is a little hard-headed. Well, a lot of hard-headed. But I just feel like if they were more submissive to the information and wanted to listen, then it would be more of a change in this world now.
Right on. Well, I definitely want you to know what's going on there is happening to us everywhere. And I'm just excited for the build and for the connection, because I think we need to use this technology and this time to reconnect to each other. So I really care about what's happening in Lake Charles, just like I care about what's happening in my hometown of Philadelphia, or when I care about what's happening in Sacramento. I think this is a way for us to pull together to help each other. And so I think sometimes we don't ask young people. Sometimes some of us don't ask young people, what do you need? Where are you going? You know, how do we assist you in your build? Y'all so awesome to have Javon there, because Javon will be rolling. One thing about her, when you ask her something, you better be ready to roll. Don't be asking her something and you ain't ready for that answer. I'm very careful how I ask Javon for stuff or ask her about things. She'd be like, we doing this, right? You'd be like, well, huh? So you got to be ready. But that's, you know, I think this is the perfect time right now. You just have to tell us what you need. And we need to hear from you all as well in terms of where it is that you're going, so we know how to assist you. So we don't show up with something that we think we need because we needed it back in 1988. Well, we're not in 88. We're in 2020. So you may need something a little different. So we got to hear from you all. You know, I wanted to ask you all how you feel about the time that we're living in with all of the Black Lives Matter and protesting. And how do you feel about that in your town, where you are? Do you feel like that's a part of you? Do you feel affected by it? Do you feel like those are things we're not dealing with in our community? How do y'all feel about that?
I feel like the time that we're in right now is just crazy. Like, I'm getting really tired of turning my TV on, seeing another black man getting killed, just seeing all types of racist things. We have a president who's a pedophile. Like, 2020 this is a crazy year. I just feel like the people are getting more and more tired of seeing all this hate, all this negativity towards our people, and they're just getting sick of it, and they want to make a change too.
Right on, right on. Are you hearing that from your peers, dear
Oh,
brother? Are you hearing them talk like that?
yes, ma'am.
Right on. So what's the next step after y'all talk? I mean, I don't want to hear details, but do y'all talk about strategy or things that you can do to pull each other together, or do you want to study more? Like, what do you think some of those next steps are?
I try to give them as much information I can as possible because, like, my circle I hang around, if I tell them something, they'll go do their own research and try to further their knowledge on the topic that we spoke about.
Right on.
And the next time we see each other, we end up having more intellectual conversations, and it just build and build until, like, we can make action towards it. Like,
Right.
the first step is talking about it. The second step is how are we going to handle it. That's the second step, and that's what we try to establish that and see who all really is going to help us and who all is against us. That's really what we try to see.
What about you, dear sister? In terms of your peer group, how are you feeling about what you're seeing, being alive now in this time, 2020?
I feel like it's a wild ride. You read about things like this in, your history books, and it's different to be a part of it and to actually live it. Sometimes it feels surreal. Like, I was reading something the other day. Like the other day, we did an interview at 104.9, a radio station here, and like they put the title as activist, and I was like, I almost feel like unworthy because like the activists from the past, they did so much, they had so much, they got so much accomplished, and I feel the pressure. But my speech and debate coach used to always tell me, pressure does one thing: it either bursts pipes or it builds diamonds. So we're really, like, our generation is letting this process and this pressure build us and push us to the country that we really want to see.
Right on.
And you
Right
look
on.
like a diamond. I was just looking at you like, is she going to protest? Because you're over there looking fabulous.
I got my protest class.
Right on. So let me ask you this: where do you see, where do you see things going? Where do you want them to be? Because usually when you're trying to pull something into existence, you got to have a little bit of an inkling of what it is that you want to see. What would be so different? What would y'all bring in as the next generation?
I feel like our generation is somewhat more, we're more together in some ways just because of how we grew up. Because even if you went to school on the South and in the North, you were gonna cross paths some way in sports or just on the street and type of thing. So I just feel we'll be more united, and yeah, that's it. I just feel like it'll be more of a unity and everything because eventually they'll wake up and see, oh, that was wrong of how what we did back then, what our ancestors did back then. Eventually they'll start to realize their wrongs that they've done, well, that their ancestors have done, and start to feel not compassionate, but like more sympathetic towards our feelings and stuff. And I just feel like that's the future that I see ahead.
Right on. Right on.
I got a question for you, Jalen. What will happen if you don't see that?
That's more work. That's more work for us to do.
Right. Because I just want to suggest and submit that at some point, like of course, we always, this is exhausting and we want to just be able to be and to coexist with each other. I get that. and admit that for myself. But I also always have in my mind, if that doesn't work, because you can only beg and plead and ask so long, and then you have to build. Because whether or not people come with you, you still, I heard you, I know you got others in your family and you got to build. And so I'm always curious, like what happens when, if that doesn't happen, with our first goal, of course, being that happening. I used to be in the same situation where I was like, here's what we're going to do. Here's what we're going to do. And then I just really had to build for my children and to put into them that they're free, because part of it is us. We got to be free in our minds.
Yeah.
And when you free, you free. It don't matter how I'm free, I'm free, but I'm part of a group, and I'm not fully free until we're all free. But as each one of us starts to free up our mind a little bit to say, if don't nobody show up, I'm gonna show up every day. If nobody builds, I'm building. Hopefully the community will get behind me, my community first, and then other people's communities. But that begged the question for me, like, what happens and how long does it take?
That's a very good question, Javon. That's a very good question. If you're joining us, I'm going to flash this up here. If you're joining us, we are talking to activists from Lake Charles, Louisiana. They have a protest today at 6 p.m. The people versus the system to unite together to protest, peacefully protest for the removal of a Confederate statue from the courthouse lawn. That's going to be today at 6 p.m. on the North Grounds at the Lake Charles Civic Center. And they're going to march to the courthouse. Wow. I am praying for you all, sending positive love, light, and energy to you all as you do this. Please utilize this social media. Talk to your constituents around the country, because you're definitely not alone. I think that the difference between what we had in the 1960s and the 80s is we have this thing called social media. And this is like a matchbox, if you will. It allows you to ignite with people, to ignite in people, and to unite with people across the country who so feel you. And it also gives us a different narrative of what we may think, because some of us only heard about the South through our grandparents, through our great-grandparents, some of us. But we don't know about the South of today and the young people and just the people who are there, period. And so that's why I wanted you all on today to talk about this march, to talk about why you want to remove that statue. What are your plans? How can we support you? And just one more time before we get off air, just tell the people, I just did, but tell them why they need to show up today. Show up and show out. Why they need to do that today.
Who got it? You got it, Tasia?
That's not it.
And I'm proud of y'all.
Yes.
Thank y'all
so much. Today is the day, y'all. Like, we waited long enough. We've been through the motions time after time, but we have to do something, And if we don't do it, who's going to do it? If we don't join, if we don't come together, if we don't push this issue and become doers instead of just thinkers, then who is going to do it? So, the generations before us, they've had their turn, they've done all they can. They've applied what they knew. We have an advantage because we have different outlets. We have different resources now. So it's up to us to execute and utilize those resources to our greatest advantage so that we can be a productive generation and not just, one of those pages that you turn and not learn from in the history books.
I know. Anything you want to add on to that, dear brother?
Just adding on to what she was saying about the social media. That's our biggest tool now. Like, we have 2-year-olds, 3-year-olds that know how to use a phone. I feel that's the thing that we need to push the most. We should have a voter's education.
Right.
History, Black history, because I know they only teach a little bit in school. We need full Black history.
The real history.
Yeah, we just need everything to pump into the youth so they can really understand about what's going on, that was going on in the past, and what's going on in the present so they can reshape their future, how they're coming up and how they see the world and stuff.
Right on. Right on. So I want to offer this up as we leave. I hope to talk to you all again after March so you can tell me what's going on. I think y'all got to talk to the rest of the world so they know what's going on in Lake Charles, because it's pretty special. And I think that we want to know how to support you, but you got to tell us what's going on. So thank y'all so much for joining us today on this special edition of our Earth Mama Live. I only come live now like this when it's things I really think people should know. And we definitely need to know about this march today taking place in Lake Charles, Louisiana. The people versus the system uniting together to peacefully protest the removal of a Confederate statue on the courthouse lawn. Y'all, thank you so much, and I'll see you again soon. Peace and blessings, family.
Peace.
Don't sign off, y'all. Hold on.
Okay.